So, good evening, guys. This is a quick express Timor criminal space. It has as purpose to give a quick rundown of the weekend developments at Vivka, but also, please, guys, it has to, as first and last point, to caution everyone with the triumphalism. We are mocking a lot of NAFO guys, pro-Ukrainian guys, and there is a lot of zrada coming from Ukrainians and a lot of hit pieces on the Western and Ukrainian press. Western press had a huge WAPO tome over how fucked up the whole run up to the offensive was, and that piece basically destroys the Ukrainian high command. It is extremely colonial in its approach. You would think that you were reading Italian uh, high command in Albania, literally saying that the guys who are working with the human material we're working with is literally shit. And also, there are a lot of things that which, I mean, on the WAPO piece, but also on other pieces that led to the WAPO. Because as you know, since roughly the end of July, there were these pieces that the counter wasn't going as fast as it could. Ukrainians were not committing to the war gaming that I had done, to the plan that I had done. I pointed out also that Americans apparently had a completely warped up image of how things were going, because at some point they even said that within 1 to 3 weeks, despite the Ukrainians being roughly around Robotine still, they would be able to reach Melitopol, that was roughly 50 kilometers from there. Of course, this didn't happen. And on the other side, the Ukrainian press now, especially the Ukrainska Pravda, so Ukrainian Truth, is literally doing a absolutely hatchet job of Ukrainian politics in general, but they are really getting onto Zaluzhny. And this is why I say, I mean, like, everybody is like, it may be a setup, a psyop, whatever. I think that the realization, what I always said, the realization that whatever happened this summer was an absolute failure. And they are realizing that not because they're losing equipment or they're losing, I don't know, ammunition and supplies. No, they are missing guys. The most important part is that the realization for most of the units that took part in the counter is that they are missing guys. And if you want to understand why this is going like this, the best part is to look again at our very appreciated and very famous 47th Mechanized Brigade, which, after getting absolutely lambasted in Robotine, was sent to get fucked in Avdiivka, and their first attempt to do anything literally ended up with them losing at least one Leopard 2A6 and probably between 6 and 7 Bradleys. A couple others were lost beyond the line of combat. We will speak about this tomorrow when we will take the stage for the attack from the north towards Ugledar. But so this is not very important. But right now, what I wanted to say is that if you accrue all the losses in personnel, losses that we know, they had admitted that had lost half, more or less, of their brigade. In other articles, they were saying that they had casualties in 4 digits. So basically, if the brigade is, as I think, between 1.6 and 2.5, and I'm being very generous with 2.5 because I think there were about 1,680 something. In the best case scenario, half of the brigade was a casualty. And saying best case scenario for them, for us, it's rather the worst case scenario. So basically, when you see what they're doing right now, it's small counterattacks with 1 or 2 Bradleys, because most of the small pushes by the Russians now are small fire teams that are basically inspired by the Wagner tactics in Bakhmut. But anyway, this is not also very important. No, but the point is this: the 47th has lost roughly about 70 Bradleys. If we add whatever was cannibalized, whatever was damaged, or whatever was worn out, we could put the out of combat Bradleys at least at 80. And they had, for the whole brigade, 99, according to the leaks. They received a bit more, and not enough to replenish everything they had lost now, but what they had lost back then. So once you analyze it like this, and of course, not every damaged Bradley is a loss, and not every Bradley that was hit was even really damaged or taken out of action. But basically, at least one is now in Kubinka, apparently. No, going towards Kubinka. But the losses for specific brigades, despite whatever is being said right now, I posted a quote that some units, some type of vehicles didn't lose even 5%. I'm like, yeah, I don't understand what the thing it is, because the units who lost less than 5% were the units that were never employed. So the Challenger 1, the first time it went nearby to the battlefield, to the line of contact, got hit and got destroyed. Everything that goes into the line of contact, sooner or later, is going to get destroyed, because that's how this battlefield is right now. The attacking side is actually, unfortunately, unlike back in the days, the side who has more to lose than the defending side. Defense is always easier, but the accumulation of firepower does not allow the attacking side to actually work upon how an attack should be working, which is 3-1 minimum. But the whole copium right now is being directed, and you can, make this parallelism from the Western press and the Ukrainian press towards the political leadership. Why the political leadership? Because even if Zaluzhny has fucked up, the one person who was responsible to relieve Zaluzhny from the office, the president, didn't do it. The Ukrainska Pravda has the hit piece on the relationship Zaluzhny, Zelensky, and it literally shows that very early after April, where Zaluzhny was literally asking for basically half of the American forces in order to push Russia outside. Zelensky at the beginning was saying like, "What the hell are you doing? This is unrealistic." And now we hear that from the Secretary of Defense on the US side, who said the guy asked me for 17 billion artillery rounds and 350 to 400 billion dollars of military aid. And this, of course, as I said, is half of the yearly budget, more or less. And when it comes to the actual war fighting financing, America pays about half of its budget in wages and other services to its troops. So actually, it would be the whole yearly budget of the US military that would have been given to Ukraine in order for it to basically fight Russia and beat them. This, I think, whatever Zaluzhny had said to Austin, I think was more of a joke, a sour joke, to say like, basically only you guys can change this affair, we're fucked. And on that aspect, I think that Zaluzhny appears to be a very, how could I say it without being too empathic towards this asshole? a tragic victim of circumstances when he was pumped up as shit by the Americans as an Iron General, and finally, like most of these people, and I said, Zaluzhny or our very dear and charming Tuvan Baboon, it's the same kind of deal. These people are not stupid, but they're not fucking aces either. They are mostly managers at this point. They're not super maximum, super high, extremely gifted commanders or tacticians. They are mostly managers who have managed to stay at their position or to get at their position through both savvy politics and also connections. They are not stupid, as I said. There is a brain behind it, but from what Zaluzhny dared to write on his piece to The Economist, I think we are way better served with our Shaigu son, because the guy honestly has taken so much shit and is slightly turning this whole affair around. And of course, he has the means to it, because this is what I wanted to speak about right now. One of the biggest problems that we're seeing with Ukraine is that whatever the hit pieces, whatever the propaganda is ongoing right now, they are completely forgetting that Ukraine, at the base of this problem, is simply not the best vector for whoever wanted to fight Russia to be able to prevail. As I said, the unique advantage of Ukraine is that it has so many borders with NATO members, so it can stay in the game almost indefinitely, unless, as I said, the Russians start taking serious radical measures, and well, that means a democide a way or another. Because, yeah, I mean, it's a huge country. As I said, we're speaking about the second largest landmass in Europe, and it used to be 37 million, but even at 25, 30 million, given the way the Russians started this war and the way it turned around, it would need, as I said, extreme measures, draconian measures on the Russian side, mass mobilization, a complete differential into the current production of their own, and then literally throwing everything they have at Ukraine. And that at that point, indeed, the Ukrainians are going to die way faster than now, in larger numbers, and Europe cannot and could not keep at that point. So indeed, it would either be a NATO-Russia conflict at that point, or simply the cessation of existence of the Ukrainian polity as we see and feel it now. So on that aspect, the biggest problem of Ukraine is that its critical mass is too small. It cannot deliver onto the defensive battle anymore. For as long as Russia does not reduce its pressure, it does not reduce its troop number, it does not reduce its artillery supplies and so on, it doesn't matter what Ukraine is going to be within this current situation, it will not work. They tried force multipliers, they tried outside ESR, they tried NATO tactics, they tried everything that you want. It's not working, and it will not work from now on, not because suddenly Russia is a behemoth. Russia has always been a behemoth, but simply because now Russia has the situational tempo and awareness that it wanted from the beginning of the war. And that's what I'm again saying, that I think Kiev and the north of Ukraine were not a feint. They were part of the strategy. But if it didn't work, it wouldn't matter for Russians themselves. Because, as I said, once you get Donbass, once you get the south, I'm going to post a small map during the thread to show you that, in fact, currently the Russians are in a completely different vision. So first of all, I'm going to put you guys on the thread the map that I spoke about. This is the current control of the Black Sea. And as you can see, over 70% of the Black Sea coast is under Russian control. Of course, some doesn't really matter, because, I mean, you got the Kinberg Spit, and, you know, that it's not really usable for anything, but it still blocks the Ukrainian exit to the Black Sea to a large extent, and their only possibility right now is, as I said, is the Danube Delta. Anyway, that's not the most important part. The most important part that you need to see and feel is that Ukraine is in a critical mass position where they need everything, but what they are getting right now is what they can get. So everybody was saying that ammunition is not coming fast enough, vehicles are not coming fast enough, weapons are not coming fast enough. This is simply not possible for Ukraine of now to absorb. It's as simple as that. They're having huge problems with their own mobilization. They're having huge problems with their own production and triage. One of the biggest problem, if you see what Ukraine gets, and I have the thread, in terms of small arms, individual small arms, Ukrainians right now are roughly at, I think, 22 different models of, I think, 17 makers. So let's start with the M14. They got M14s, they got M110s. Some units have HK 417s, others have 416s. Then you got some guys that were training now with the Henels 556 in Germany. So it's going to be one more manufacturer with one more system to it. They got at least for the individual soldiers a double set of ammunition. So basically, they got NATO set 556, 762 by 51, and on the Soviet side, they got this complete madness of 76239, 76254R, and 54539. This makes logistics extremely complicated, but also initially it helps with providing a quick answer. So basically, you cannot equip a unit because your fucking Kalashnikovs are shit or you don't have them. Very simple. You grab existing weapons from US, Dutch, whatever, Canadian stocks, and then you drop your NATO rounds. At the beginning, it helps because everybody is fresh on stock. It's the starting point. But you see that slowly, once the unit is used to whatever they have, but they start losing weapons, ammunition, people, and so on, you need to re-equip all this stuff. And this re-equipment is being done now literally hodgepodge. And I mean, look at the situation with the German help. Germans have introduced right now within the Ukrainian army 3 different DMR/sniper rifles, 3 different machine guns, MG5, MG3, MG4 for special forces. You got all these different weapons that can seem fine and whatever you want, but are problematic within the logistics and the triage. So what weapons are you going to use? We learned recently that Ukrainians, because they couldn't have 762 by 51 quick enough, they went for 308 Winchester, which is supposedly more or less the same thing, but it's not exactly the same thing. They bought them in Switzerland via Polish intermediary. So all this stuff that I'm saying, the problem with Ukraine right now, and that's why they're dooming as well, is they're literally scrapping the bottom of the barrel in order to stay put. Now, how does this affect the Ukrainian soldier at the front? I don't need to tell you, but how does it affect the Ukrainian projection in the future? Well, this is a big issue. As I said, if you are not sure about your own supply, like you're asking, but you're getting whatever you can get, and every time you are asking for specific standardized equipment, standardized ammunition, standardized supplies, suddenly you find yourself with a internal military-industrial complex that up until December 2020, 2021, if you want, because 2021 they were a little bit over the top. They tried to accelerate some things, but still, you got your home industry being stuck between 50 and 70 vehicles a year. I'm not saying tanks and no, whole vehicles. So sometimes you got BTR Force, you got whatever. These were new build. And the rest were mostly refurbished. That's one thing that Ukrainians did well, is that they started refurbishing a lot of vehicles on the wake of this war. So they were roughly in armored vehicles between 500 and 600 on refurbishment. You got BTR 70, you got BTR 80, you got tanks, you got AD, Raiders, whatever you want. But basically, they were literally trying to get every single piece of trash that they could put wheels and tracks on it to work again. And this thing was when it was peacetime, they could still actually procure themselves, and they had the time to do it. Right now, they are going through a crash course into quote unquote reindustrialization, but at the same time, they are receiving a lot of shit from abroad, and this is what is killing the Ukrainian military-industrial complex. Why? Because what the Ukrainians are undergoing is an over specialization. And what does it mean, this over-specialization? It's very simple. It means that they are going through niche products, like they're building FPVs, they're building drones, they are now trying to replace small firearms. They are trying to find a way to have their own subcomponents in order to repair whatever they captured from the Russians, they got from the West, and so on. But the problem with this is that, as I said, most of what is coming in Ukraine right now that's usable is donations, where Ukrainians need to actually familiarize with the system, but also do not have the spare part chain. So that's one thing that Snake usually said at the beginning. If they wanted to keep going with their vehicles, they would start cannibalizing shit. And this is true. This happened and still is ongoing. And the Russians are also doing the same. But where the biggest advantage on the Russian side is that everything they have, even when it's not standardized, like for instance, they have 3-4 type of tanks, it's still their tanks, it's their production, it's their industry, it's their shit, in few words. And this is something that I wanted to tell before, and was going to be part, and still is going to be the part I want to do with Snake, which meant that the biggest threat right now for Ukraine as a logistical question is not that they don't receive enough. It's the fact that they receive, that they are basing their forces in donations. So basically, let's take the HIMARS for instance. HIMARS is being used extremely liberally, but once you don't have those missiles, or you don't want to spare those missiles because you're using right now, and I've seen a huge shit. You're using two HIMARS strikes for a D30 or D20 gun. It's like, guys. I mean, I understand that it's to support your troops, but the exchange of both is stupid. Because if you are going to start to put a HIMARS for every single mortar, gun, and so on, you are going to run dry. And this is sometimes what was going on top of the jamming from the Russians, on top of miscalculations. Sometimes the HIMARS was used, and in 2 cases in Zaporozhye, they hit what they thought was a arms depot from Ukraine, the Russian side. They hit a storage that was indeed being used by the Russians, just not at that moment, which meant that the Russians knew south of Tokmak that they were made up, so they completely diverted a logistical chain to go through western Tokmak, which then again was visited by Ukrainians. But the thing is that sometimes with this liberal employment of HIMARS, started losing its importance, and also its strategic importance on the battlefield, because you are using it just to replace what normal artillery should have been doing. But because of a lot of systems and a lot of issues and Lancets and UMPKs and so on, the HIMARS had to literally bear the burden of Ukrainian suppression missions. Everything that the Air Force could not do, HIMARS would do. Basically, that's what is it. But the thing is, once you, as I said, you are overusing your HIMARS, and the Atacam's issue is exactly that. Now that they dried up their first supply, then we have the problem that they're complaining, where's the rest? And this is a typical drug addict logic on the Ukrainian side. They are so used right now to get everything that once it doesn't come for many reasons, most of them due to the supply chain, they fall back to things that they simply cannot control anymore. So this is what's going on, for instance, with North Avdiivka, where they are putting in danger a lot of their own troops by just small counterattacks in order to keep the Russians at bay, but they cannot stop them. They cannot reconquer the positions. And this is even worse than Bakhmut, because in Bakhmut there were counters, they had enough Soviet-style tanks, they had some artillery, they had their own Burevi. By the way, since 3 Burevi were destroyed, the Burevis haven't been anywhere. So when the Ukrainians say they're going to produce 750 vehicles in a year with their own budget within Ukraine, I mean, it's a lot to process, let's say it like this. And this is exactly the biggest problem with Ukraine right now. It has gone from a donation to help these people out to a lifeline, and this is what exactly is killing Ukraine, because at some point, if the intensity of combat goes on and we see that the Western aid and supplies and so on do not go up, then you're going to have the backlash that you're having right now, which Ukrainians are saying, oh, the West is not helping us, they came too late, and Westerners are saying, we gave you everything that we discussed that you needed, and you still didn't do anything with it. And then you discover also, and I'm going to revert to the quote that I said, that, oh, Ukraine spared its Western assets. Fine, you spared your Western assets, but you lost your Eastern ones, where more than 50% of what you had. So at the end, what you're going through is making a logistical chain even worse, because before you had the know-how to take care of your Eastern set, but with your Western set, everything needs to go abroad, or you need to relearn again how to draw a wheel. And this is the biggest problem, once again, with Ukraine. These people do not seem to have thought that the war would last so long. Because you saw the Russians, they saw what the problem was. They started the implementation of a reactivization light of their military production, while Ukraine, despite everything that was said, is now saying that they will invest $2 billion plus dollars in their own military industrial complex for things that are the only way for their foot mobiles to advance. Because we saw what happens to a quote unquote infantry-led offensive, it gets ground down. Now, let's go back to Avdiivka. Avdiivka, there have been 4 different footages, 2 from the 47th, 1 from a shitty drone unit, and so on and so on. So basically, those 4 footages are literally locating the Russians right now firmly beyond the railroad. There is 1 footage of a small Russian unit north of Stepove. I'm going to put actually the map into, again, so you can know this. And so this is where the unit was being hit by FPVs and Bradleys. That means that if the unit has passed through there, I think I posted it, guys. If the unit has passed over there, is slowly getting a chokehold over Stepove. And it's basically game over. Because in order to cover them, you need to fight from Berdishi. And when you see where the shots were fired from Bradley to that tree line, it was coming from Berdishi. So this was my demonstration I wanted to do. I'm going to put other markers on the map. But most of it shows that clearly, slowly, but surely, north of the coke plant, things are going from bad to worse for the Ukrainians, despite every video they're going to post, despite every FPV, hate drop, whatever. The reality on the map is showing they need to pull back. Same story we had with Soledar, same story we had with Artemovsk, same story that we're going to have with most of Donbass right now. And I know that it doesn't bode well for the losses, and it's in a sense normal because now you're an attacker that cannot accumulate as much forces as needed to sustain any single attack because, well, ISR, because long range fires, because drones, because whatever you want to do. But this is reality. There is a problem now for the attacker that's probably triple. So basically, if you want to achieve anything, your first push is going to be what the Russians did, basically 200 vehicles at once, dislodging whatever Ukrainians had as first defensive lines, and then coming back at them and grinding them to the point that at the moment, the whole cookie crumbles. So overall, up north is going fine. Down south, we had word about Severne being entered. We haven't any geolocation right now, so I will not go forward and say, okay, we know they got it. Which is apparently true, is that there was advance towards Severne, and Ukrainians themselves are putting Severne half on the gray zone. One of the things that has apparently cooled down is the movement from the industrial zone towards the Hunter's Lodge, Tsarskoye. That thing, I think, has more to do with both sides not showing anything right now rather than not being any movement there. However, the most important part, once again, remains what the Russians wanted to do with what they did. So basically, dislodge the Ukrainians from the north. We're having footage of those trenches being attacked probably somewhere between the 10th of October to the 1st of November. I posted it. There are two Ukrainian corpses in those trenches. As I said, this is how things are ongoing, and basically that's what I wanted to say. First of all, please do not take advantage of the COP, but it's not because we mock them that it's over. Right now is where we wanted to be in 2023 for everybody who is behind Russia. But don't forget, 2024 is around the corner. And in 2024, there are three major points. This is why I think the Russians are not so triumphant right now. And every major Telegram channel is pointing it out. They are shitting their pants, but they're not done. They're not out yet. And this is where I think the focus should be held. Whatever is going on up north, in Bakhmut, in Avdiivka, and because, by the way, there are pushes from Russians around Robotine, all these things are not groundbreaking, except Avdiivka, of course. Whatever is going on right now is mostly corrections of what's going on and what went on during the counter, and it should, in my opinion, only be regarded as done or whatever, literally way past 2024. So probably in February we'll know what went on with Avdiivka and what went on with the small corrections or large corrections, call it as you want. So right now, guys, it's fun. We can dunk on NAFO and we can dunk on pro-Ukrainians. That's not a big deal. But don't forget, not only it's not over, but 2024 with the planes, with a reshaping of the Ukrainian armed forces. Don't forget, these guys, they knew they fucked up in 2023. They mostly know how they fucked up, where they fucked up in their counter. Right now, what should be more important for us to see is how they're going to reorganize themselves. So the cope with Western gear was saved, we're going to use it for another counter. That's still cope. But once again, if these people now forget their madness, but as long as Zelensky is going to be there, it's going to be difficult. Their madness of trying to score PR points instead of military victories, then we should be extremely wary, not because something groundbreaking is going to happen from the Ukrainian side, It's going to be more of a grind, of course. But I think the Russian leadership right now should not overestimate whatever happened and should also not try and play it safe. So everything that we're seeing right now on the Russian side, on the technical side now, we have 4 UMPKs per Su-34. We have the FPV production going up. We got thermal FPVs. We got lanced with thermals. We are going to have slowly new artillery armies currently being formed, apparently, of course. We are seeing also long range strikes. Every single part of this equation, the Russian side, is showing that they're going to go up and not down. But the point is that everything needs to be on the same page. So, for instance, on the Kherson area, on the lower Donbass area, and so on, all these places should not be seen as safe. We are not asking for Kherson like Krinky or face of Berislav, Golai, Pristan, and so on, for things to go back to a zero line. Tolerating a little bit of Ukrainian activity in those marshes is okay because it costs them people. It fixates as many Ukrainians as it fixates Russians. But once again, my main point, my core point is that everything that we're seeing here needs to go through two levels of validation. First of all, is it going to cost more to the Ukrainians than the Russians? Yes, no, yes, let's do it. Is it going to bring us closer to a breakdown in functioning? I'm not saying to the army, the Ukrainians are not going to break down. I'm going to tell you why. Because the Americans are not going to let them break down. At any point when the Ukrainians are going to be ready to clap, the Americans are going to find a way to slow down the war, including intervention, but make sure that Ukrainians are not swiped away. This is one thing that I understood right now. It's not going to become Afghanistan right away. The only way for America to go out without the loud bang is to basically destroy as many military assets from the Ukrainian side. And when I mean military assets, I mean people. Large damage to Ukrainian formations, infantry, mechanized infantry, Air Force, and so on. This is how this war is going to go towards where the Russians want. Destroying infrastructure, destroying vehicles and so on is important. But right now, the biggest issue that Ukrainians have is the impossibility to replace their human losses. And this is why I made the thread about why I think Ukrainians are complaining about no exchange so far. And this is also why I think that Ukrainians are undergoing this bit of a doom phase, because the projections for any kind of mobilization right now in Ukraine are yielding, I'm going to be frank with you guys, between 40 and 70,000 people. Tops. It's just not enough. It's just simply not enough in the current view, because, first of all, not enough equipment to be able to protect these guys. So you're going to have a lot of Toyota piggies. But most importantly is that if the rate of loss continues to be the same, that it's in average for both sides between 2 and 2.5 thousand KIA, so between 7 and 9,000 casualties in total, KIA, VIA, POS, MIA, then you are looking at, with those 40 to 70,000, big max 10 months. So basically, Ukrainians are looking to be in an even worse position in the next 10 months period that they are right now. This is why they're dooming. It's not that there is nobody to go and fight for them. It's simply because those that they can count on right now for the next period of time is just not enough to keep anything ongoing. And this logic was best explained by the Ukrainian Marine on the BBC article, who said, we got Marines that cannot swim. This is how fun it is. So yeah, uh, this is it, guys. We are not done, far from it. But Ukraine is now on money time. They need to make a choice if they want a short outburst, reinforcement of the troops, equipment of 5 to 7 new brigades, plus reserves for the brigades that were already depleted, and then try and have another go to Zaporozhye and have the Russians be a bit more worried, or they're going to try and stick to the current attritional warfare model, which is going to grind whatever force they're going to try to constitute over time and leave them with the exact same problem in 10 months. And you know what it is when you do the exact same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Exactly, that's insanity. Thank you very much. This was the space, the very short space for today. And I hope that you guys were okay with it. I want to take a couple of A&Ms and I'm going to do it. Let's start with Johnny, but it's going to be very short, guys. Hello, Johnny. Your turn, man. Can you hear me?
Oh, boom, my mic's on. There we go. As I was saying, what's going on, Teresa?
It's okay. It's just like I wanted to make a quick rundown because tomorrow I'm going to be fully occupied until around 3 o'clock, and then I'm going to do the space.
No, you really got the finger on the pulse right now, because honestly, it's like I'm just finally, it's just so fucking satisfying seeing the biggest of these Nazi fucks finally dooming and coping. That's honestly, like, you're 100% right that don't count chickens before they hatch. Even though, honestly, my comment is like, besides the black swan scenario of the United States really like going all in on this, which I think is far less likely, although possible, absolutely possible, but far less likely than the reality is they're going to dump Ukraine like a bag cold. I just don't see a way out of it. Like everything I'm seeing across the board looks bad for Ukraine. Like one of the things that I'm very actively tracking is donations from like support organizations, non-governmental stuff in the United States going to Ukraine. I mean, it's not there anymore, man. They're not even getting like, and they're all bitching and moaning about it. They're not getting even a tenth of what they used to get. Like, Americans don't give a fuck anymore. Like, nowhere near to the same scale. And this Israel Palestine, I know you said like, oh, you don't really give a fuck what's going on over there, but honestly, like, this is what really changes the game for Russia, because you
Yep.
see these artillery shortages. That's the big thing. No shells. They're all going to Israel, and there's just it's perfect timing. Everything just seems to be perfect timing. But I don't see a way out for Ukraine. I just really don't. I know. And the other thing I'll say is like I think there's a. What do you think about this? Seriously, you think there's absolutely no chance that there's not going to be there's never going to be a break in the line somewhere and a partial collapse on some area of the front, that the Russians are for once not going to be with their pants down, actually are going to be able to press it and exploit it? You think there's no chance for that? Because production for everything is through the fucking roof, and it's only getting better. I mean, it's through the roof, and it's only there's a lot we don't know. Trust me, or publicly anyway.
Actually, no, no, no. I am saying something completely different. What I'm saying is the following: is that the moment when everyone's going to sense that it's going to go Saigon 75 and Kabul 21, then the Americans are going to make a move. I'm not saying full intervention because to intervene, there are going to be a lot of signs there, movement of troops, preparations, and so on and so on.
I know you're
No, what
trying to
I'm
be
saying,
short here, but how would you see that like look like then if it's not going to be like
actually,
the fucking Navy in the Black Sea?
no, no, no. That forget about that. That thing you need to forget about because it's not gonna happen like that. What is gonna happen mostly? They're gonna fucking start parking shit in Romania, and from there, if you see suddenly 50, 60, 70, 80 American F-15s, F-16s starting to accumulate, or F-35s, then you're gonna have a problem. Of course, they can always hide it through Italy because they got enough range to go there, pop standoff weapons, and go on. But my point is the contrary. I don't think this is going to happen like that. What I think is the Americans are going to make a small show, a small fireworks. So let's say you got a complete breakdown. Pokrovsk is fallen. Russians are going to bypass it and are going north and west. Suddenly, you're going to have unknown jets going from Poland, crossing the border and dropping small diameter bombs and advancing Russian troops. And you're going to have, I don't know, 50, 60, 100, 120 Russians dead, a couple of tanks destroyed, and everybody's going to pretend that nothing happens. At that
You
point,
really think if the Russians get cocky enough, they're still going to keep pretending nothing's happening? I feel like they're
no,
not
no,
going
no,
to
no,
let
no.
it
I'm saying
go.
is that,
But
and then the Russians are going to do what they do most, and you have to think of this as a reverse of Bailun. In Bailun, the Turks were actively guiding the Islamic militias. Then Russians dropped two bombs on a outpost. Over 30 guys 30 Turkish soldiers were dead. And what did Turkey do? They didn't took out on the Russians. Quite the contrary. They literally started to savage the Syrian military. Russia is going to do the same instead of trying to bomb. I don't know Ramstein or whatever. What they're going
no,
to
I
do?
got you. Just go through some proxy.
They know they're going to
I
hit
guess when
the.
you're a great power, that's what you're.
They're
The
going to hit the
NAFTA would laugh
Ukraine.
at that, but great powers, I guess that's what you have to do,
Yeah,
right?
but I think in this case it's just going to savage the Ukrainians to the core, and then it's going to be something completely different. Whatever plan B they had to exploit post whatever breakthrough they were doing, they are going to reduce whatever cauldron they have. Because this is one of the things I'm really scared about right now, that Ukrainians are seemingly, in my opinion, completely apathic in defense. And I can see that in Stepova. In Stepova, they are trying to resist as much as they can. The Russians are not going through too fast. They want the Ukrainians to show their cards. The 47th right now, all they lost from what was transferred is maybe 11 Bradleys and one or two Leopard tanks, and the rest is just Soviet junk, quote unquote, sorry to say it like this. So basically, what the Russians want from the 47th, especially the 47th, is for them to move up, show themselves, show the staging point. We also don't know what's going on the backfield because a couple of threads I showed you, we can see that every staging point of 47th has been visited so far, be by Lancet, by Fabs, by whatever you want. But right now, we don't see the unit losing cohesion. I mean, the losses are there. They probably are down to 25% to whatever was transferred in Avdiivka, because Avdiivka is also a smaller front. It's not like the whole Zaporozhye line. But in this case, the biggest situational awareness for the Russians is to know how they're going to push beyond Avdiivka. It's very nice to get the coke plant, to get the city, but the city is just a stepping stone to go beyond that, and beyond this Seretine, beyond this Hrubivka, and so on. So basically, your point is still eliminate Pokrovsk as a salient and then move up to the sister cities up in northern Donetsk Oblast. So this is where I think the moment Kramatorsk is in danger and Konstantinovka falls, then you're going to see a complete to be almost impossible for the Ukrainians to be able to mount a proper defense given where they need to come from. And this is why also the Russians right now are pushing so hard in around Kupiansk, because that would put the Ukrainians in a whole defilade to go and defend Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and the rest of the northern Donetsk Oblast cities. Everything in what the Russians are doing right now militarily has a sense, is absolutely smart. The execution, however, is difficult because of the things we know. It's not the army that should have actually been doing this a year ago in tactics, in assets, and so on. But at the same time, the Ukrainians unfortunately have eyes, they have assets in defense, and defense in this war has been easier than ever. Uh, if well prepared and well trained and well taught and supplied in intelligence, ammunition, and assets, then defense in this war is an absolute thing of beauty, and we saw that in Zaporozhye and so on. Okay, I'm going to add Snake. And up, sorry, guys. Go off, Nick. Nick, are you there?
Oh, hey, you cut off, so I didn't know,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I didn't know if you were calling on me. Yeah, I mean, this like sudden wave of dooming is honestly, it's kind of surprising to me that it happened this quickly from the Twitterati. And you see NAFO is also quitting at the same time. Like, it's like I'm not sure exactly how to explain it. I mean, but the funny thing is that if you go and look at the mainstream commentators, the mainstream like Western commentators, like guys like Preston Stewart and these people who make videos on YouTube, they're all like, hey, even if Ukraine gets cut off, like it won't be immediate because obviously there's still contracts that are signed, they still have ways. So essentially, the where the West is and where these like Ukrainian doomers are two completely different planets right now. And I just think that's just kind of funny.
Can I comment on that, Snack? You know what's interesting? It's that the ones who are dooming the most, and this is what gives me hope. The ones that are dooming the most are the ones that have the most up to date finger on the pulse information. They see, in my opinion, I think they see how shit really fucking is bad. It is bad. I mean, they don't. I don't think they're not even revealing how bad it is. Like if they're really, I think they want to reveal so many more details about what kind of losses they're taking and how much equipment they're losing and how much equipment isn't getting through from Poland. It would just be catastrophic, honestly. I think the fact that you're seeing, and they were the most ardent, they were the most death to Russians, put them in body bags, piss on their graves, only good Russians are dead Russians. Like they were the most ardent ones, and they're the ones that are dooming the most. The mainstream commentators. I mean, how could they really know what's going on? They're just like they're just sycophants. I mean, they're just repeating whatever whatever talking points they're getting. They don't really know. But half of these really bad Ukrainian doomers that have a big Twitter presence, they do a lot of the volunteering. They do a lot of the fundraising efforts. They do a lot of the drone and component sourcing stuff. So they're very, very tight with these units. I mean, they speak to these units on a daily basis, and they're all fucking dooming, dude. They're all so dooming so bad. It's not like somebody on Fox News freaking out like, "Oh, we're about to lose Ukraine." Like, and they have no idea what's really going on. These are people that really do see what's going on. They hear about the shit that's happening. So that's my only takeaway from it. That's the only way I can spin it anyway.
I mean, I think Rob Lee also pointed out that the fact that they made fun of Russians so much is now impeding actual analysis because they can't actually objectively get narratives out there that basically are saying like what the Russians are doing correctly.
No, it's great. They
And
shot themselves in the foot 100% on point. Yep.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I mean, I would just also say that this is also what I also said on Twitter is like this is not a boxing match. You don't get to tap out just because you don't have a referee out there to stop the fight.
No,
So
exactly. You threw
even if
down
there's
that fucking gauntlet. Now deal with it. Now fucking deal with it.
yeah, I mean this is obviously obviously these people like yeah like if they value their lives, it might be prudent like many people have done before to try to find a way to like sneak out of the West before they get conscripted. I mean that's more or less all I can say. I mean if you don't want
I'm
to
sorry.
just
Let me
be
comment
a
on that
part of
real
like
quick. So, Red, this is something really you guys would find very, very, very interesting. Uh, eh, I'm in the northeastern U.S. There's a huge Ukrainian community up here, and basically right now, I can tell you for a fact. I know. I personally know Ukrainians that are into all sorts of shady shit. A lot of them were raising money for Ukraine, obviously. One of the biggest businesses right now is getting people out of Ukraine. What's that telling you? I haven't seen it this prolific. People are asking about it. They're raising money to get relatives out. Before it was about raising money to send people over there and equip people to send volunteers over there. A lot of the Ukrainian churches, they had people that volunteered and went over to Ukraine. Now it's literally the exact opposite. Now people are asking who knows who to get them out, what's it going to cost. Like, I think the Ukrainians are gonna like they're gonna run away from Ukraine like rats from a sinking ship. Seriously.
Yeah, guys. But basically, that's what we actually said so far. The biggest situational awareness failure for most of these guys on Twitter, but generally on social media, trying to help out Ukraine, is that they forgot that we are not speaking about likes, we're not speaking about ratios, we're not speaking about meaningless numbers of engagement or whatever. No, it's people dying, it's material being used, is advancement, is whatever you want. It's real. And one of the things that I want to add, Fennec, I'm going to add you in like 30 seconds. I want to make a point, and I know that I shouldn't because this is giving him a bit more reach. But if you guys want to laugh, look at the shit that the stupid Finn is making at Vatnik Soup. I mean, every single thing that is presenting those videos can be applied to NAFO without questions asked. That I think is exactly where you have this complete lack of self-awareness on the other side. I think for a lot of us guys, it dawned to us that okay, we need to stop trusting everybody on that side because, I mean, I personally felt betrayed for the Balaklia debacle, for the Kharkov push. I felt betrayed because I was like speaking about with guys who were mostly okay when it comes to sourcing, and then suddenly there, I told this last year that I went dark, and I was okay. I was feeling stupid because once again, I wasn't doing 100% my job by checking every info right, left and right. Things that happened after Kharkov, this I started to take things in my own hand and make my own fucking research and try to find people that I could. And I also spent a lot of time through Ukrainian teach channels because you need to know these guys have even less OPSEC than the Russians. The only problem is that at some point, you know, you cannot do everything on your own. But the point is the following: the I think Ukraine with its hybrid, and that's the funny thing, with its hybrid campaign of showing results to get funds, if you want, a lot had a lot in common with what the jihadis in Syria had. They got those, they got ammunition, they need to show what they were destroying, they were beating the Syrian army. At the end, they still lost. And it's just the same for this. If you got these, and this is something the Russians are complaining right now, they got this managerial style. At some point it's going to break down because you need a plan, and the plan is not get this ammo to be used to do something. And I had this feeling that for a long while the Ukrainians are going through that, are making up shit, and are one of the things that I wanted to point out is the extreme attempts to deplete air defense over the Kherson area, but they still don't have the planes for that, which means that okay, you can destroy what 3, 4, 5, 10 batteries per 45 days, but you don't have the planes to do anything. And of course, you can use it to open like flying channels for your cruise missiles. But how many days are we now without scalp strikes? The last scalp strike was intercepted. And this is where I'm getting through. I think there is a hybrid that could have been done with Ukraine, half NATO, half legacy forces. It's getting actually it's becoming a pastiche to what it was supposed to do. They're doing a huge PR shots, but the reality on the ground right now, because it's determined by anything else but the show that you're putting up, is that you're recoiling, you're pulling back. So that's what I want to say. I think we need to keep an eye on two things. First of all, not as much on the dooming, but on the narrative they're trying to push. And right now, the narrative they're trying to push is absolutely hilarious, and we should enjoy it. Fennec, I'm adding you, man. I'm really sorry because you made the request. God damn it. Holy fuck. You may talk now, Finnick.
I don't see him as speaker.
Yeah, put him on through. Yeah, he's there. Yeah, Finnick, it's your turn, man. You have to
Okay,
be able to speak.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. A perfect example on the front of Ukraine using munitions that they get to for propaganda purposes and running out very quickly is the whole ATCAMS thing, where they got the missiles, they did a few strikes, blew it up all over social media, and now they have nothing. And they're begging for more.
Yeah, it's that I touched at the beginning of the space that this is something that is turning against them. They have a problematic kill chain, and they are trying to make the best out of it, making PR and having results. On the helicopter strike, for instance, I want to add it. The results were underwhelming, and hilariously, pro-Ukrainians started to actually point out that okay, the strike could have been very successful, but on short term, it didn't change anything because the Russians could pull whatever helicopters were there and replace them on the spot with other helicopters from other areas. And this is one of the things that I've always spoken about. It's very nice to destroy tanks, APCs, whatever you want, but you need to base your tactics, your strategy, your thought process about this destruction on the fourth generation of the enemy. If your whole point is to destroy roughly 3 tanks per day or 2 tanks per day, doesn't matter how much it is, and the enemy can pull up four others per day to replace what he has lost, then your whole practice is meaningless because at the end the enemy is gonna always have a replacement. And this is the thing with Atacams and the donations. The donations are not under the Ukrainians do not control the supply line in this case. So once they're using them. And need first of all to wait for a second decision of getting them, and once they get them, they need to start thinking about how they're going to use them in order to have the maximum impact. And as you said, and as I say, the problem with Ukrainians is that they are going through this absolutely hybrid piece of shit of a campaign, which is we're going to show that we're making huge damage, while in reality, I think the Atacams should have been used instead of trying to hit the helicopters, trying and stop the railroad works down on the Azov Sea. This is my point. I know that people are not going to appreciate it, but if I was Ukraine, I would have tried that to hit the working crews there and try and make a mess out of the works down on the Azov Sea. This is not happening, and this is the funny part.
Yeah, it's funny because you're focusing on the lesson of Ukraine is focusing on destroying equipment, just bombing the enemy while they sit on a defensive position, as it were. It's a lesson that goes all the way back to World War I, where they thought, we've dropped so many shells on the enemy, they must be dead. We just keep dropping shells on them. We are making progress. But the only way to make progress is to actually take ground. Nothing else matters in war.
Yeah, actually, the thing is that you can have again a two faces of the same strategy. Attracting the enemy so you can put a counter and take ground. That's how it works. So basically, bombing them to shit and then at some point advancing. It's exactly what the Russians are doing in select areas of the front right now, and that's also something that suddenly is changing the course of this war because once again, the artillery usage on the Russian side has dropped drastically. I think they are probably around 5,000 rounds a day, big maximum, and I'm really being generous. Most of it because they have managed to hyper focus the Ukrainians on very select areas of the front, by gaining back initiative. And this is the very interesting part. Russia, for the whole year 2022, except when it lost the initiative, was sustaining its movement, its advancement, purely on being on the offense. So basically, having the Ukrainians put their head down. But now the difference is that they know how it went until then, and the practice is taking the ground, as you say. Once you take the ground, the other side needs to react, needs to have new positions, and then it also needs to pay attention to the territory and topography. So basically, they cannot just say, okay, we got pushed out of Avdiivka, we're going to sit here in the valley and get bombed all day long.
I would also say that I suspect another reason why the Russians are using less shells today than a year ago is because of the FPV.
Yeah. Yeah, go. I completely agree with you. The FPV for short range artillery has changed everything. And I had this discussion with another guy who said like artillery is more important. No, there are two different roles
Yeah.
right now. Artillery is extremely important for saturation, but when it comes to the kind of threat Ukraine is posing right now, FPVs on both sides are more than enough. The problem with FPVs is that we are seeing that both sides are making huge progress in disrupting them, and we saw that with for a while the FPVs in Krinky were completely disturbed by the Ukrainian electronic warfare, and now we're seeing Russian electronic warfare working. We saw that FPV that detonated in advance while trying to target the quad. We saw the Volnorez AV system put on the small mule that the Russian forces are using in southern Avdiivka. So all these things, this is the biggest problem I have right now with FPVs, is that we knew that they were going to get cracked at some point. So mass EV is going to make them less interesting on a positional style of battle. So basically, the positions are well established, and you're going to have a huge problem using FPVs. But once you are still on the move, the FPVs are going to be extremely hard to counter, despite the vehicle-mounted FPV. If you want to see how that thing works, there is a very recent attack by Ukraine's FPVs of two Russian tanks. They have their engines running. Apparently, they throw a track and the crews went away. And the AV system on the back is still functioning. Whereas as long as it has energy, the AV system is making it extremely complicated for the Ukrainian FPVs to hit properly the tank. The moment that the engine dies, no more energy on the black box, and the FPVs can go to the target, and they finally manage to burn the ATBV after, I think, at least 6 or 7 shots. So this is what I wanted to say. For as long as uh, these systems are going to be as affordable as they are right now, so basically not hardened against electronic warfare, not properly shielded also against elements, because one of the things that you can see with FPVs is that in a very hardened wooden area, they're going to be extremely complicated to maneuver, and most of the times that's why both sides wait for the targets to go out in the open, first of all to reduce interference, but also to be able to hit the target head on. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment too. Like next year, though, we might actually begin to see more autonomous systems. Like, the limitation of FPVs being that they must be, you must use them with an operator who must guide it manually. Like, you might see more autonomous systems that can do this targeting, target selection, tracking autonomously if they are cut off from home base. I mean, in this sense, I mean, at some point, the EW is going to have diminishing returns, and that's going to be the next thing. And I'll be surprised if they are able to actually come up with enough anti-air coverage to actually deal with this.
Yeah, I think as I said, they are a bit late on that, but they said that I had already tested the new Izdelia 53. Everybody's starting to call it the swastika set. I think that is going to change a lot because Zara or Araskan, call it as you want, or Zakharov in this case, promised that it would be a networked battery. So the four of them, or the eight of them, or the 12 of them, depends on how much they're going to be launched at the same time. We're going to more or less both communicate between them and also with the Overwatch Zara drone. So in that case, as I'm saying, we might see something very different from FPV, which is because this is one of the things that the Russians did properly. The Lancet at some point was in danger of being jammed. That stopped, first of all, by adding a self-targeting system, which actually makes it possible for the Lancet to see where it is itself and what it wants to target, instead of relying on the operator, the man in the loop, whose mostly video signal is going to get jammed. So at some point, it's not going to see where it's going. And the second thing is that, yeah, once you're gonna start saturating the front, even if you're not going after HIMARS, but once you're gonna start saturating the front with, let's say, 15, 20 different of these flying little sheets above the Ukrainian side, you are going to have such a huge palette of possibilities because Ukrainians, as you said, are going to need far more air defense, far more electronic prevalence. They're going to have to conceal their tanks, vehicles, whatever, a lot more. And this means that they're going to have to atomize their defenses. And that's exactly what HIMARS did for the Ukrainians. It stopped the Russians being able to drop 10, 15 tanks at every single attack they did. This is how they got Lugansk Oblast. And this is what is going to change, because atomizing your threat, I think, is the only way for the Russians to move forward fast enough without having to deal with all this bullshit. And then there is always the problem with the UCAV. I think that the one big advantage with these targeting autonomous Lancet is going to be that they are going to go for a lot of targets, and if there is this contrast or video reconnaissance of the target, then they could do SEAD on short range, so allow also the UCAVs to come back. So Orions, Muassa-raseh, and so on could actually benefit from a first attack in a way that is extremely reminiscent of what the Azerbaijanis did to the Armenians in 2020. First, they sent decoys, then they sent the Harops, and then behind the Harops came the Bayraktars. And this is the whole point that we want to see. We want finally to see a localized air dominance that would open a huge breach in the Ukrainian defenses that Ukrainians would need to patch with whatever troops they're going to find in close vicinity or from another part of the front. The disbalance, the out of shape, the complete lack of stability on the reply to Russian attacks, that's what the Russians, I think, are going to go for. And this I think we're still far from it, most of it because the Ukrainians right now, as I said, still have a lifeline from the West. The war is not getting back to what it was, and that I need to agree with you, Snake. If the war goes back to a Kiev front, with all that movement, that's going to break the back of the Ukrainian army, because they will need to start doing back these huge latitude changes. When you go from Donbass, the 300 kilometers go to Kiev, start to have also a different pool for one army on one side and the other forces on the other side. And I think that's how the Ukrainians are going to break. When finally the Russians put a secondary front, a large opening, but with a meaningful target. So either Kharkov, but Kharkov is too close right now, either indeed Kiev. And if it's Kiev, this time the goal would be to, in my opinion, not do the same mistakes they did last time. And those mistakes were that they tried absolutely to go for the city center of Kiev. And when they couldn't go for it, they tried to go around in order to cut off the city. But the problem is, in my opinion, is that you cannot cut a city of 3.5 million, okay, around 2.2 now with everybody that has left. by putting so few troops. So whatever happens up north, if the Russians decide to go through there, I think at this time they should be exactly doing what the Ukrainians are still doing currently. So the force cannot be as big or as small, it doesn't matter, but it needs to scare the bejesus of the Ukrainians. And at that point, yes, this secondary opening is going to make it extremely complicated for Ukrainians of this condition to react properly of both. So yeah, guys, if you want to add something else, no problem. Otherwise,
I mean, the other thing to pay attention to is also like in this next phase, like the casualties on the Ukrainian side are probably going to increase pretty substantially because as the collapse happens, I mean, this is what happens when you go from like 1944 January February of like 100,000 KIAs per month to 300,000 KIAs per month in 1945.
yeah.
This is so when this basically when the collapse happens, once you see the army crumbling, this is their the Ukrainians' ability to actually absorb damage actually decreases substantially. And then the question for Kiev is like, how can they actually get enough bodies to actually fill the holes in the front? Because we have seen it so far where they have been able to patch holes in the front by doing some aggressive recruiting. It's very spotty, but you're gonna have to see an intensification of the effort, and it remains an open question whether they can actually muster 50,000 men a month to actually deal with this. Because if indeed there's a Russian breakthrough and entire units are being annihilated, then you would essentially have to really outpace the Russian levels of mobilization, which is on right now tracking about 20,000 per month. You're gonna have to see at least that, but probably closer to 40,000-50,000 a month, right? With all the
Completely.
in order to actually generate any kind of forces that can stay on the field, because half of them are going to get killed and wounded, and this is
Yeah, but I told you, I completely agree with your point. At the beginning, I was a lot more contrived and cautious. But right now, I think if Ukrainian army is in the state it is really right now, and something like that happens again, then yeah, it's gonna be for a very short moment of time a full panic, and the only opening to a complete crumble of the Ukrainian forces is gonna be that moment. So yeah, I agree with that. I 100%.
I mean, some of the nationalists are actually praying for something like that. They're basically saying like, oh, if Kiev is attacked again, then people pull together. People are going to start volunteer for the army again. I don't think the mood there is going to be the same as it was, in like January, February, March of 2022.
No way.
I agree with you. That's what I said actually. That's what makes me a bit confused when everybody's, especially Zelensky, said we need to make sure that everybody who is needed for mobilization mobilizes. I'm like, bro, are you sure you want to really do that? Because you could do that in the beginning when people didn't know what the war was about. And you could also hide the extreme amount of losses that you took the first months by literally projecting your losses to the Russians. But once you try to get people right now, and I'm going to go back to the BBC article, when the guy said, okay, right now it's very difficult to lure people into service with money. Something that, by the way, Russian liberals are saying is going on in Russia, when guys are lining up right now because of money and also because of the fact that there is a sense of pride that has been recovered after the successful defense in Zaporozhye and also the regaining of the initiative. And this, I think, should not be underestimated. I think that Ukrainians have a huge problem right now, and that problem is also seen through the coping. But we should not overestimate that. We should wait for the next step of both sides. And the next step, I think, and you think as well, would be a worsening of the military situation all over the front without a breakthrough. And at the point of rupture, then you're going to have some vital signs that we had last year around Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, when Ukrainians are just asking to get the fuck out, as you said. They're just asking to drop the towel and be done with the situation. So yeah. So guys, if you want to add anything, it's the time or never, because I'm closing shop. But tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central European time, we are having a very extensive space over the last post Avdivka, I'd say, option for the Russians, which would be the attack down South Donetsk via Ugledar from the north. If you want to add anything, you're welcome. Otherwise, I'm going to see myself out. Thank
Yeah,
you
I was
very
just
much.
gonna say to us, and this is something Snake said. I just it just came to be now. You know, it's true. You know, this level of like I don't know, like what do they call that? Like mass psychological manipulation that was possible back in 2022, you know, where basically no one was questioning anything in Ukraine. Everyone, I mean, if Zelensky's word, I mean, God, if you know, he said, move, put your left hand up. Everybody would put their left hand up. Put your
Yeah.
right, you know, I mean, literally. And now that, I mean, I don't think it can be understated just how, I think just how crucial the fact that they don't have that anymore is. I mean, it's now that you have this internal questioning, it's just not there. That whole fairy, like that magic fairy dust that had everybody mesmerized, it's gone. It's objectively gone. The Ukrainians themselves see it, and I just don't know. Like, yeah, I don't know if there could be a catalyst event, like, you know, a raid on Kiev, which I agree there would never be the same fervor like 2022. But I don't even know if that catalyst event even exists anymore. With just I mean, frankly, conversations the Ukrainians are having, you know, they're in disbelief of their lack of support from the United States. They're in, you know, there's a lot of Zaluzhny, Zelensky, you know, kind of partisanship going on amongst Ukrainians. And it's the things that couldn't have been imagined, you know, a year ago plus. So I think that's going to weigh very, very heavily on Ukraine and be very, very beneficial to Russia going forward. Thanks for hosting today, by the way, Trista.
No problem, no problem. Have a nice evening, guys. And we see each other hopefully tomorrow in the afternoon for me. It's going to be a long space, I promise you that. And we are going to make a review because, as I told you, my review would drop once we had the signs that they would have given up on the counter and tried to at least have a cathartic admission of their failure. It's happening. So, and because of this huge article on WAPO, I can slowly take apart the article and use it as a backbone for a review of the year 2023. And one thing is that I have a lot of material that went through the different accounts that were martyred along the year. So I can go back and point to the things that I said in order to defend the point of our team war crime group. You need to know something. Once again, I really want to end this. I cannot believe what I'm reading on the Washington Post piece, because if the U.S. head honchos trusted the Ukrainians with a truthful presentation of the Russian armed forces, which from then they based their counteroffensive on. Oh my fucking god! Now I completely understand why it was such a shit show, and I completely understand why the U.S. thought that it would have some kind of result. Because I'm pretty sure that your Americans themselves knew it 100% that it was maybe not supposed to fail that hard. But the CIA said it, and the Department of State as well. They were expecting mild advances. They were aiming at Tokmak. And I myself thought that Tokmak was still doable for Ukrainians. But, I mean, it's
But
not
there's
possible.
going to be a lot of blaming, though, Trista. You got to realize right now, like as you're going to see this U.S. Ukraine decoupling, which, you know, who knows, it might stop. So far, it looks like it's just getting worse. But the number one thing I'm seeing is Ukrainians blaming America and all American outlets blaming Ukraine for different reasons. I mean, everybody needs a reason why this got fucked up so bad, because they look so fucking pathetic. I mean, they look so bad. You had former European commanders like making ridiculous claims
Yeah,
to the public, I mean, they advised people in an official capacity, like people, billionaires and large corporations, and people in Washington, they take advice from these people, to plan for geopolitical, geostrategic, actions that they take that apply to them. And they're not dummies. That's the thing. They're not stupid. They read between the lines. That's how they're successful in business. And they're seeing that these people have no credibility. So now there's going to, I think, in my opinion, there's going to be a massive saving of face where, oh, no, those sneaky Ukrainians, they're almost as untrustworthy as the Russians. They lied to us about everything. They're the ones that stole all, they stole the money from each other. Like, there's just going to be a million different reasons,
for sure, for
so
sure. And this started almost early on the year 2023. I don't know if you guys remember, but in February they had to appoint a controller for Ukraine because there were these allegations. There was this article early on the year who said that only 30% of the aid ended up to the front lines, and they suddenly they changed their tune. Okay, we got Pete. Okay, fine, Pete. I'm gonna add you, man. Go on, Pete. Pete, go on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear it because when you
No problem.
when you added me, then the sound goes off for a couple of seconds, so I didn't hear that you told me to speak. But anyway, thank you for letting me speak.
enough excuses, Pete.
No, the thing is, I mean, Johnny was talking about the blame game and stuff like that. I completely agree with that. But there is a far bigger problem, in the future, and that is, there are hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians roaming around in Europe. And if the the money bank stops, and if the war is kind of,
what are they gonna do? No, you're 100% right, dude. This is gonna be such a clusterfuck. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, these people are not going to be happy, and they are going to seek revenge, on everybody and everything. And these guys are really fucked up in the head, So I see interesting times happening. I know, well, interesting times. I mean, like George Carlin would say, I see interesting times happening in the near future in Europe and beyond, And with all the weapons also floating around, I mean, it's not going to be a nice continent to live on, to be honest.
No, they're gonna be like the PLO in the 70s and the 80s, or like the Northern Ireland, in that same era. Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be dangerous to publicly, be Russian or anti-Ukraine or whatever traveling abroad, because they're crazy. I mean, they're going to drink too much Kharluvka, and
Yeah, but
we had a story. Let me tell this real quick. Sorry, Pete, to
yeah,
keep
go
interrupting you,
on.
but we had this totally hilarious story that happened in one of the biggest Russian Turkish baths in Brooklyn. There were two Ukrainian guys. And the one, what's that word that they think that nobody can pronounce? I just can't think of it. Like
Palenitsa.
yeah, like Jesus Christ, like any Russian can pronounce that. But anyway, the one guy was accusing the other guy of being Russian because he couldn't pronounce it. And so he took a wine glass and he stabbed him in the eye with it, and he took his eye out with it. And it turned out they were both Ukrainians.
Yeah, but
they were both Ukrainians from Ukraine, like no affiliation to Russia. They both hate Russia, but they were both drunk as shit at this Russian bath. And how funny is that? But you're gonna have, yeah. I mean, it's gonna be bad. I mean, if they were that bad when they were quote unquote winning, how bad is it gonna be when their welfare gets cut off and everything else?
But I think that it's going to be, there are two things here. First of all, it will depend on how much Russia, quote unquote, is going to win. If for some reason, and this I don't believe, Russia gets a free range on Ukraine, so basically we have this idea that a lot of
Rump state.
Yeah, but no, that's the thing. If Russia literally doesn't put a full ramp state, but puts a Finland on Ukraine, However, it asks for the nationalists, quote unquote, and all the clique that led the war to be given to Russia for trial. I can see that perfectly happening, but because the Russians will know that these people are going to flee, then yes, you are going to have all this nonsense like the Baltics in the late 40s, early 50s, mid 60s, where America wouldn't recognize the Baltic authorities under the Soviet control, basically part of the Soviet Union,
Oh, there's no
and
way this. There's no way this. I'm sorry to cut you off, Tista, but there's no way this ends with full global international recognition for whatever outcome exists.
I don't
I
know.
mean,
I
because
agree. I agree. I agree. But the point is, which one is going to be? Either both sides like pretend that nothing happened, and you got a Finlandized Ukraine, which is still possible because that's how Ukraine was until 2013. It was a turf war, but at the end, none of the parties had complete control, and Ukraine could swing one side or the other according to its quote unquote needs. But in this case, what I think is going to be happening is that Ukraine is going to become effectively a rump state on the door of the Western quote unquote allies. Part of the Ukraine that's going to be under Soviet rule, let's call it like this, under Russian rule, is going to be afflicted with the same kind of status that Crimea has. However, once again, I do not see the Americans going for the same kind of Minsk bullshit, what they're going to agree upon. And this is very interesting because it would depend on who is going to be the next president. If a Biden, a Harris, or whatever Democrat is there, we're going to have a shit show styled along the Minsk lines, which is not going to be respected except for the firepower. Or then if it's some kind of maverick like Trump who is going to try and force the Ukrainians to accept, to give up the oblasts and to give up some kind of demilitarization or a rather smallish army under the cover of bilateral agreements from the US and Russia to afford Ukraine a sense of independence or whatever you want to call it, then yes, then indeed that part is going to rub a lot of Ukrainians abroad in the wrong side, and we are going to have a very hard time for whoever would treat Ukraine, even if they're not pro-Russian, but would say, okay, thanks to this shit show in Ukraine, now Europe is 10 years behind in terms of global economic power. And this is exactly what's going on. So I think the reckoning is going to come on both sides. On one side, you're going to get Ukrainians complain about the West that they didn't help them. But on the other side, don't forget what is happening right now with the Poles is exactly what is going to happen on a larger scale once this war ends. And for a lot of businesses in Eastern Europe, the Russian market starts to get closed. Because also you need to understand that Poland right now is gaining a lot through the fact that this war allows Poland to be a gateway towards Ukraine and to be also a dike or a dam against Russia. But the moment when the war ends and they don't need to pass through Poland in order to go to Ukraine, but Ukraine can be allowed to have its normal traffic. And unfortunately, that's going to be the case unless Russia takes Odessa. Ukraine is going to have an exit on the Black Sea, so a lot of its maritime traffic is going to be reinstated. And so Poland automatically is going to lose most of its current hegemony because that's the main point. Poland is taking advantage from the fact that there is a blockade on the Black Sea or a quasi-blockade. So in this case, as I said, do not forget, this coin has two faces. One face is the Ukrainians are going to complain about being left to rot versus the Russians, but the other side, the Europeans are also going to start thinking twice about how the fact they ended up from a rather prosperous and advanced economy to an economy who is going to be more and more politically and financially subordinated to the US, while they had options abroad. That's also one thing. We are starting to see also Europe having huge problems with China, not as much because there is a political issue, but simply Europe is losing the balance of trade battle towards China. And the first thing that you do when you lose the balance of trade is you start cutting your imports from the place, and vice versa happens. So there is a self-destructive path that has been taken from Europe since roughly 2008 when it comes to its near-abroad relationships. And unfortunately, it's going to keep going if Ukraine loses. So in a sense, I perfectly understand a lot of pro-NATO guys saying, okay, we cannot afford Ukraine to lose because it's going to be our loss. And it's true, that's how it's going to go. And right now, that's how it's going. Europe is going to be the number one non-Ukrainian victim of this war. After it's going to be Russia, of course, because there is going to be this rift between one of its most important markets, Europe, and itself. But that's how it is. I mean, there are two ways on the highway, and Russia needs to make peace for at least a couple of years with that situation, and that its orientation right now is more and more Eurasian instead of being fully European as before. So yeah, guys, thank you very much, and let's see us together tomorrow. Have a nice day. Bye bye. Oh, Pete, go on. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to add. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, if you talk to Russians in Russia, I mean, there is not one one Russian in Russia who even contemplates, another Minsk agreement. That is out of the question. I mean, that is not going to happen. They are not going to. They're not going to accept that. Number one. Number two. Okay, it's true what you say about Poland, but I mean, Poland, has got kind of an extra little bonus. I mean, to thank you for their service. I mean, they got the gas transit line, from Norway. So now basically, Germany has to beg, Poland for gas, whereas they were kind of the central hub before. So that is kind of the little bonus that they get. And number three, what I wanted to say is, I mean, if you talk to the same Russians who say there is no way there is going to be a Minsk agreement, these same people say, that Odessa is part of the plan. They are not going to stop before they have that.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that I said. Right now, militarily speaking, Odessa seems a far-fetched objective, but you can always have Odessa differently, and that means that there will have to be a exchange with one oblast or one location to the other. The biggest problem with Odessa, once again, is that in order to have Odessa, you need to have Nikolaev. In order to have Nikolaev, you need to go very far in Voznetsk. So basically, the war is about to continue for a lot more than 2025. And the announcement that was made from the Kremlin was, I mean, we know how much worth you can put sometimes to those announcements, is that end of 25, the objectives are going to be achieved. That still means 2 years of war, and in 2 years, a lot of things can happen, and especially seeing the strategic outcome right now, it could be possible that the Russians, by 2025, are ready to have another go at the northern Kherson and the Nikolaev Oblast. But if indeed that happens, I think that's how it's going to happen. They're going to get Nikolaev, they're going to push up north Nikolaev to Voznetsk, and then all the rest west of Nikolaev is going to be under threat. And that's how they're going to be like, okay, we exchange this territory, Krivoy Rog, or whatever you want, but the extent is that you're going to give us Odessa. This, in my opinion, is a big no-go from the beginning for Ukraine, because if Odessa, that region, Chernomorsk, Odessa, Zalynski port is gone, then it's finished. Ukraine literally going to have the smallest possible river and port to export its produce and whatever they have to export. And that's literally the death of Ukraine's export. They're going to have to rely through 3 different neighboring countries, Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary, Hungary, with Romania being bypassed by the fact that they will still have the port of Reni and Ismail. So on this case, this is my biggest concern right now. On the military aspect, Odessa is problematic right now with what we're seeing from the Russians. On the political aspect, is also extremely problematic because no Ukrainian leader without getting beaten in the battlefield, that means like 100,000 Ukrainian dead, is going to agree to let go of Odessa, especially when you see how far Odessa is and how shallow that front is going to be. Because in order to sustain Odessa, you need at least the buffer zone that you have right now for Melitopol, Genichevsk, and Berdyansk. That's literally 100 kilometers. But check a map when you see how much depth you need to have from Odessa to 100 kilometers back. You are taking out some prime real estate from the Ukrainian state, which is only going to be possible if the Ukrainian army is soundly and completely defeated on the battleground. I'm not saying that every single soldier is dead. I'm saying that the capacity of the Ukrainian army to resist the ongoing onslaught from the Russian side is next to zero. And this is how I think the Russians are seeing this outcome. But if you want my opinion, as of now and as I see 2024, I do not think that the Russians have the potential right now to plan something beyond Nikolaev. Up to Nikolaev, I would say it's perfect, but beyond Nikolaev, it's going to be extremely complicated. So there you go. Okay, guys, it was far longer than I expected. Okay, if you want to intervene, Pete, go on.
Yeah, I just want to say, do you agree with the fact, that the worst thing that could possibly happen right now, not now, but I mean also in the near future, for all parts, for all parties, in the conflict, would be a ceasefire, because that would kind of mean that it would resume between 3 and 5 years from now, and it would spill beyond the borders of Ukraine.
100%, 100%.
As for a ceasefire, it would be a bad deal for both sides. For Russia, for sure, because it has the initiative and the momentum, even a slight momentum, and for Ukraine because that means that they would half-ass whatever job they wanted to do, which means that instead of rebuilding whatever they would have, they would still keep spending that money on a military that cannot be expanded as of now with this current situation. And also, as I said, for a ceasefire, you need to be two to agree. And in this case, none of the parties right now is going to agree to a ceasefire unless, once again, as I said, a third party comes up with a threat or a carrot. And on that aspect, I don't see the Americans being able to convince any of the parties that they have the capacity to force the Ukrainians to give up any kind of territorial premises that they have, and can force the Russians to accept whatever outcome the war is delivering right now. Russians can go on the war. They know they can go on. America, the only way they can force the Russians to stop it is to actually declare war and intervene on the side of Ukraine. But that means a lot more dead people and not even a guarantee on the Ukrainian American side of a success. So right now, the Americans know that they cannot have this snowballing out of proportion. So the only potential ceasefire that you may have is Americans trying to talk the Russians out of a more extensive conquest and say to them that they will force the Ukrainians to sign a paper saying that the 4 oblasts that the Russians have annexed are theirs. Don't forget that the oblasts annexed actually are all rather poorly defensible strategically at their margins. Kherson, for instance, is an absolute nightmare. That's exactly why the Russians actually vacated it. So the Kherson Oblast beyond the Dnieper, because it's the passage, the transit towards there was done through 3 main bridges, as you take them out, that means that your troops are going to get stuck. And on the other side, in Zaporozhye, half the city is difficult to defend because it's beyond the Dnieper as well. So even there, this acceptance for the Russians right now is not possible, in my opinion, because strategically they are very difficult to defend if the Russians have to trust the Ukrainians not to do anything stupid within the boundaries of the current oblasts. So therefore, in my opinion, a ceasefire is almost impossible, and also it would be a bad deal for both sides, especially for the Ukrainian side. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Have a nice evening. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.